Okay, this is the part that we are trying to build, and we're gonna make it in build it in design modular. Something that we need to remind ourselves of is that the design modeler associates units with the geometry, so that's probably one of the first things that we need to do. So we have to make sure that our units are in inches. If I go back here, this is how I would like to build this. I'm going to create this cross section first in the XY plane, then I'm going to extrude it. But when I do that, I would like to do the extrusion in two directions. So it would be symmetric both directions in Ansys workbench, and each obviously extrusion would be half of the depth of extrusion, so half of 1.75, 375. Then I'm gonna take care of the rest. So this section would belong to the XY plane. I'm going to start off with the big circle, whose radius is 0.5 inches. Just checking. Okay, the units are inches. Good. Section. I'm going to make it 7. And I'm going to give the dimensions. I know the radius in this case, and it's going to be 0.5. All right. Let's go back to the drawing. Next, I'm going to build this part. So the way that I'm going to build this, I'm going to use a rectangle. A rectangle that extends from this edge, which is my y-axis, all the way to this edge with a total length of 1.5 inches. And I want to make this symmetric around the x-axis so that later, if I want to slice it into quarter model, a half model, then it would be easier, even though I'm not going to use the x-axis to slice this, but it would be better, it would be easier to add some constraints to geometry so that later it would be easy to manipulate. All right, so 1.5. All right, so I'm going to go to the rectangle. Roughly place the rectangle, so I'm going to add the constraints. Its top and bottom edges are symmetric with respect to the x-axis. Then I'm going to add some dimensions. So one of which is this length, which, as discussed, it's 0.2 inches. Then I'm going to add this dimension. This was 1.5. All right. Next thing is this rectangle. So I'm going to trim out or add the fillet to the edges later. But if you think about it, the total length of the rectangle, if I want to add it right here, goes from here to this edge. If you extend it, it would be this length plus this radius. So it would be 1.75 minus 1.5, which is 0.25, plus 0.375. Right. 375, 5, and you're counting the sum of these two. 0.625 is the length of the rectangle. All right, so I'm gonna zoom in a little bit, and I'm gonna go to this edge. I'm gonna add another rectangle. So the constraints are that this one is also symmetric around the x-axis. And we have some dimensions to add. So the thickness of the rectangle, or the height of the rectangle from this perspective is 0.1. Then the length of it is 0.625 as calculated right here. All right, so as far as this side of it, I'm pretty much done. I'm gonna, obviously, I'm gonna have to trim out some of the extra edges, but after I do that, I'm gonna build this one. But the thing about this other edge is that it forms a 30-degree angle with the horizontal direction. So you know that overall, this is a very simple shape. It's a rectangular shape whose height or thickness is 0.2 and the length is 1.75. But the only thing about it is that it would form a 30-degree angle with the horizontal direction. Right. Let's just go back to the sketch, and I'm gonna trim out some of the extra stuff that I have here. Okay. For the rectangle that I have on the left-hand side, I need to use a different type of rectangle by 3 points. I try to get close as much as possible to the position of the rectangle that I want to make. So I just roughly place it here, then I add the constraints and the dimensions. So I know that I have the distance from here to the center of the circle. So then I have to move the edge of the rectangle to the center of the circle. And I do this by adding a constraint. So if I go back to the constraints, there is a constraint for coincidence rectangle. So constraints, so I'm going to put here and here. And when I do that, I'm pretty much forcing the edge of the rectangle to be positioned where the origin of the coordinate system is, or where that my point of interest is. So the other thing that I need to add is I need to define somehow the distance between this edge and this edge. The way that I define this is that I know that this whole length or the thickness is 0.2, but I want to make sure that it's in such a way that the center of the circle or the origin of the coordinate system is like halfway through the thickness. So I just need to add some more dimensions here. So I'm going to go back to the dimensions. And what is the length distance? So if I take this and the origin of the coordinate system, I can force this to be 0.1. And then the other thing that I want to determine is this length. Which has to be 0.2. All right, and the angle. I have to take care of the angle as well. And there's an option for the angle. All right, what is this angle, guys? It's if you take a look at it, it's actually 60 degrees. This point is 60 degrees. So this ought to be 30 degrees, and this should be 60. So let's just choose. Then one last thing is the length of the rectangle, which is 1.75. General. All right, so I got the overall shape, then I need to trim out certain extra edges or lines from it. So modify, trim, spline. Okay, so it should give me the outline, but then there's a circle inside with a radius for the diameter. It's 0.75. I make this force the origin, the center of the circle to be the same as the origin of the coordinate system, so that we don't have centric circles. And I add the dimension. So 0.75 is the diameter according to the sketch. I think I'm ready to do the extrusion. Well, let's see how it goes. So I'm looking at half of this length, 0.75. So 0.75 equal to this divided by 2. So 0.375 is my depth of extrusion. And I have to do it, so again, because I want to use the XY plane as the plane of symmetry, I have to make this both symmetric. Okay. All right, so this is a base shape or the basic shape that we need to add some additional features to it. So we pretty much, from this point, we need to remove material from this. I want to start from the right-hand side features. So there are two holes here, each of which has a diameter of 0.25. So these are pretty much the equal radius or equal diameter of circle. So I know that, or we know that from here to here is 0.5. Okay, so distance between the two circles. And this length is 1.75 minus 1.5, which is 0.25. So 0.5 plus 0.25 from here to here is 0.75 inches. That's the distance between these two circles. And they're centered, so I know exactly where to place them with respect to this direction with this dimension. Also, the distance between the center of the circle, this circle, and the origin of the coordinate system would be 1.5 minus 0.5. So from here to the origin of the coordinate system is 1. All right. So if I go back to my drawing, I see that the circles, if I want to build them correctly, they belong to a different plane. They do not belong to the XY where I built my first sketch. They actually belong to the XZ plane. Right? So I had to create a new sketch in the XZ plane. How do I do that? I first need to select that plane. So the XZ plane, I have to select it and then go here, new sketch, click here, and then I'm good to go. So I roughly place the circles. And here's another one. See, when you're drawing the second circle, you see this option here shows R. If you click, when you see this letter showing up, it means that essentially these two circles would be of equal radius. So you are adding a constraint automatically to your drawing, which is a good thing. In this case, it's actually helpful. So we're going to see how it works. So we know that the diameter of the bigger of these circles is 0.25. So we're going to change that to that diameter. So it dimensions. See, when I change one dimension, both circles change size. This is because of the automatic constraint that was added to the drawing. Right, so I need to add some more dimensions here. Remember, the distance between the two circles was 0.75 inches, and the distance between the center of this circle and the origin of the coordinate system was 1. I'm going to add those additional dimensions. So length distance from here, here. And then from here to here, it's 1. Pretty good. Now I'm going to remove the material from the base one, the base part. So we're going to do that by using the extrusion, but in the cut material mode. So so instead of add material, we have to change this to cut material. And let's just make this both symmetric direction. And so when I generate this, then it's going to create the holes. For feeding these round edges or half circle, I actually take a different strategy. We talked about this, in 3D, you can use the blend feature in Ansys Design Modeler. And the only thing that it gives is specifying the edge where you want to add the radius for it. So we're essentially using 0.375 as the radius, and then back here. So we're talking these two edges, this edge and the other one, as the places where we need to create that length. So length, fixed radius. So I'm gonna select this one, hold control, and select the other one. These two. Then by and 0.375. And that other feature would be automatically created. So again, I use the blend feature here, and the radius was the same as the radius for the circle. And I use the two edges on these two sides to create that. All right, I'm going to move on to the next feature that we need to add. So this is the last feature that we need to add. It's not really hard as far as shape of it. You have to create a circle, position it exactly where it needs to be with the exact radius and the distance that's given. So, you know, from here to here it's 0.5. From here to here it's 1.75. So basically, from the center of the circle to the origin of the coordinate system is 1.75 minus 1.5, 1.25. And then we have this slot here, which is a width is 0.1, and it runs from wherever the circle is all the way to the leftmost edge. But the issue is not really the shape of it, because we can easily read that from the drawing. The big problem is the orientation for this, because we don't want to create this circle in the XY plane so that it will cut the material at a different angle than what we need. So in order to create the circle and the rectangle over the same edge or the surface where it needs to be, we need to create a new plane and then create the new sketch within that new plane, which forms a 30-degree angle with this direction, the horizontal direction. And this should take care of the next step. All right, so this is how I'm going to do this. Before we do this, we have to make sure which base plane the new plane should belong to. So my base plane here would be this plane. And I want to rotate it so that it will be aligned with this surface. So the base plane in this case would be XC. Right? So then again, I have to create a new plane. I have to click on the XC because that's my base plane. And there's an option right here if I can find it. Yes. See, new plane. So the new plane creates a new plane, but you're able to select the base plane. So pretty much you select this plane and then somehow transform it and position it where it needs to be. So I selected the XC plane and I click on the new plane. So that's plane 4. And there's this transformation option here. So one thing that I want you guys to keep in mind is that when you're looking at the transformation or the new plane, there are plenty of options that we can use, including the offset, including the rotation and translation, and so many other things. But we are doing this around which axis? You see, we are doing these transformations around the axis that you see immediately the center of the circle, not this one, not the reference coordinate system. So pretty much, if this is my coordinate system, I need to rotate it around this axis by 30 degrees. But what is this axis? You see, this has been color coded, which means that the red is actually the x-axis in this coordinate system. So then I need the rotation by 30 degrees around the x-axis. So rotate around x by 30 degrees and generate the plane. All right, so now you see my plane is exactly what it needs to be. That's the plane that I need to build the new sketch for the circle and the rectangle where I remove the material from the base part. So in order to access that plane, you have to click on it under the tree outline and then click on new sketch. So this is going to give you the access to that particular plane, and you can change the view, move things around. All right, so I'm going to add a circle. And I'm going to go back here and make sure that my dimensions are correct. So again, the radius of the circle is 0.2. And the distance between the center of the circle and the origin of the coordinate system is 1.75 minus 0.5. So it's 1.25. Okay. Right. I still need to move things. Okay, so now as far as the other feature, I need to add a rectangle. So I roughly place it here, but then I add the constraints. So once the symmetry constraint, so then it should be symmetric with respect to this axis, whatever that is x. Then I just need to add the dimension. So this thickness is 0.1. And I need to remove the extra edges so that it will form one single outline. Okay, and I'm really good to go as far as the sketch. I need to remove the material. That by doing the extrude and hot material. And that should pretty much make it